Arch Manning. Touchdown, Mustangs.
We're not done yet, boys.
Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, here in beautiful Lewisville, Texas, at the Dave Campbell's Mothership. And joining me from Austin, Texas, is senior college writer Mike Craven. Craven, the transfer portal is officially closed now. We still have a couple names matriculating out because it officially closes Friday night, but then it's a weekend, 2 business days for your name to go out. MLK Day yesterday. Shout out Martin Luther King. So we're basically done. But let's do a full transfer portal recap episode for the state of Texas and how our schools fared in the portal, maybe what they lost in the portal. But let's start off here, Craven, with transfer portal strategy. You had a column come out on Monday. Here's the opener, an amazing lead, Craven. Just hats off to you. The 2025 college football season will go down as the year that broke the old school method of team building. Explain that to me. What do you mean?
Yeah, it was solidified last night when Indiana beat Miami and became the first team to win a national championship outside of the blue chip ratio, which is having 50% or more of your roster be 4 or 5-star guys coming out of high school. This sport has gotten older. The sport has spread out talent-wise. And what used to be the old school way of building was you signed 25 to 30 high school kids. You let them have a couple of years of development. By the time they were juniors and seniors, they're ready to roll, kind of rinse and repeat. It's why you saw the same programs elevate themselves to national championships, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, like the Oklahoma, those kind of places that recruit that way. The transfer portal and revenue shares evened it out. And if you are a team that is willing to go all in and has a good coach and a good plan, you can put together a roster of 22, 23, 21-year-olds that can go play. And I think the team that illustrates it the most in terms of the shift is Texas. You know, so far in Sarkisian's career, he has used the portal as more of a Band-Aid, kind of the way the NFL does, right? Like the draft is your main thing. Then you go and you use the free agency to kind of plug those holes. You look at the way Texas has recruited this cycle. They let 25 players go, a lot of that to get money off their books, and some of them young guys like Elijah Barnes and Jamie French that in the old school method would have had another year or two to kind of earn their money, to earn their spot, and to see if that kind of deposit paid off. They want guys that can play right away. Like instead of, the NFL has 53 players on a roster for a reason. College football teams have 85 to 105 now. You don't want your money as the third string true freshman wide receiver who may one day be really good. You want it to be the 21, 22-year-old wide receiver that may not have the NFL draft stock, but that can go produce, that can go play and be in your 2 deep right now. And so I think we've seen a shift, Texas Tech, Oregon, Indiana, Ole Miss. Like a lot of the teams that made it far this year in college football are not the old school traditional high school recruiting model teams. They are the new school transfer portal, go heavy on the revenue and the NIL. And I think the Blue Bloods kind of saw what happened. Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Ohio State gets bounced in their first game. I think it's a real paradigm shift on how rosters are going to be. And the money's going to be from player 1 through player 45 to 50, not players 53 to 80 that may or may not be good one day.
I totally agree with you that this is a trend. I mean, when I'm watching the national championship yesterday, Kirk Herbstreit says that Indiana, their average age of their team is about the same as most NFL teams. And then you got Carson Beck, a quarterback from Miami, who went viral on Twitter X for basically saying, they asked if you had class yesterday. He said, I don't go to class for 2 years. I'm a 6-year college football player. So I understand it, but Craven, is this fad or fashion? Like, do you think Texas' strategy is smart in what they're doing, or are they jumping onto a trend too quickly that the boats might shift the other way, the tides might turn at some point?
Oh, I think it's smart. You only have a certain amount of money to spend, even at a place like Texas. Why not use it on guys who are playing right away? If you have 25 to 45% of your money in young guys out of, and I don't think Texas is going to stop recruiting high school and stop recruiting stars out of high school, obviously. They're just not going to get the same type of money, and they're not going to get the same type of time, right? Like, if you're not already competing for snaps by the end of your freshman year, why do I have a couple of $100,000 invested in you? Like, within a year or two of a guy being on campus, if he's good enough to earn the money that you spent to get him there. And those high five-star, high four-star type players cost a lot of money to get to campus. You don't want the sunken cost. Like, you don't want to see if the offensive lineman develops from year 2 to year 3. If he's not already pushing for snaps, cut him loose like a Nick Brooks that went to Alabama, and go spend that money on a guard who maybe doesn't have the 5-star ceiling, but has played 15, 20 games at the G5 level or at a smaller P4 school, and they can come in and be a junior or a senior, kind of your left guard for you for a year. And so I think the Ohio States of the world, the LSUs of the world, Texas, Alabama, like, they're still going to dominate Georgia. They're still going to dominate the high school recruiting rankings. I just think they're going to be quicker to cut bait. They're going to let more go than they gain, and they're going to spend money on some big time players to come in and plug those gaps. Like, if we look at Texas, it's Cam Coleman on the offensive side of the ball that can come in and be a star like right away. Rasheem Biles, the linebacker from Pitt, can come in and be a player right away. Like, why not give those guys more of the money than the young guys who you promised all this money coming out of high school? I just think we're going to see kind of a shift there to where it's more balanced and the money is more top heavy on these rosters.
Was Indiana's national championship last night the third consecutive Big Ten national championship?
Yeah, and the third different team.
So I asked that because do you think the transfer portal becoming more of, I don't want to say a crutch for these teams, but they are using the transfer portal even more so than high school recruiting sometimes? That was where the SEC dominated, was in high school, in the richest areas of talent. But now with the transfer portal, this might be evening out more to the Big Ten, and these two power conferences are now going head-to-head for titles instead of the SEC winning it all. Am I jumping to a conclusion here, you think?
No, I think that's true. And, when you're 18, it's harder to leave home. When you're a 20, 21-year-old transfer, it's a little bit easier, And so I think the Big Ten has the advantage there. The Big Ten has more money. Their alumni bases are bigger. Their alumni bases are richer. They're in cities and in markets that have more businesses and more finance and more economics in that way. It's why Texas is doing so good. We just had 6 teams in the AP Top 25. We never had more than 3. And a lot of that's economics. Texas Tech's got money to spend. Houston's got money to spend. SMU's got money to spend. I think some of it is that the depth of the SEC works against it. The Big Ten is more top heavy. And I think the 8th best team in the SEC would dominate the 8th best team in the Big Ten. But I do think you're seeing a gap form between the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten and the top 3 or 4 in the SEC, and it's up to the conference to figure out how to bridge that gap without sacrificing the depth that's made it kind of the who it means more big time conference of college football.
I got one more high level question before we take it team by team here, Craven, and this is tough to say off the top of your head. So if you want to just move on, just say move on. Bad question, but I know the transfer portal is becoming more of a recruiting emphasis for these teams. Is there a position that you could see these teams still need to be going to the high school ranks for this type of position more so than the transfer portal?
Yeah, it's offensive line.
Okay, why is that?
Because it's a developmental position and you don't let those guys go. If you hit on an offensive lineman and you have rev share money, you are going to give them as much as you need to keep them, even if you're in Iowa State or Cincinnati or whatever. Like if you go and you look through the portal right now, you can find quarterbacks, you can find wide receivers, you can find defensive backs, tight ends, right? You can find edge rushers even. Defensive tackle and offensive line are the toughest ones because of the scarcity of the product. There are a lot of 6 foot, 185 wide receivers that can go be productive for you. There are not a lot of 6'6", 6'7", 300-pound dancing bears that can play left tackle in the SEC. You can only get those on the front end. And so if I'm investing in my high school money, I'm going quarterbacks because you're just trying to find a few diamonds, right? Like you can always go to the transfer portal if you miss, but you're always going to try to get the Diabells of the world onto your campus. But I think specifically tackles, like offensive tackles, defensive tackles, quarterbacks, that's probably where and then just the generational talents That's where I'm spending my money in the high school ranks. Every other spot, I think it's a wait and see approach. You lowball those high school guys, and then if you're a team like Texas or Texas Tech that can go kind of big game hunting, you kind of use the portal to fill in those other gaps at the spots that maybe the high school guys haven't developed for you.
And Craven, the Longhorns went big game hunting this offseason. Let's talk about every Texas team in the FBS, what they did in the transfer portal. I want to start off the conversation by best get. So who he thinks going to pan out the best for the Texas Longhorns and on the teams down. I think it's got to be wide receiver Cam Coleman from Auburn for the Texas Longhorns, Craven, because he is the number 2 player in ESPN's transfer portal rankings. And you mentioned it off the top. 25 players left the Texas Longhorns this offseason. Guys like Parker Livingston, DeAndre Moore, that originally some fans could have been scratching their head out and say, why? These were proven production guys for us. Why are they opting to go elsewhere? Well, this is part of the reason why, because Texas was backing up the Brinks truck for guys like Cam Coleman. What do you think about Coleman coming to Texas? Do you agree he's the best player that they got? And if not, who do you think is the best player?
Yeah, he's definitely the best player that they got. He's a transformational type player for this offense. Depth at wide receiver doesn't do much for you. Star power at wide receiver does. If you have a wide receiver 1 that can demand double teams, now Ryan Wingo is your number 2.
That's scary.
Right? Now your running game's got 7 guys in the box instead of 8, and the safeties are playing 2 deep shells because they don't want to get burnt over the top. And now you add a Hollywood Smothers and a Relique Brown in the transfer portal that have a ton of speed and playmaking ability. Like, this is starting. I think the thing last year with Texas was, who were the weapons that scared you? They didn't have it at running back. They didn't have it much at wide receiver. Wingo was inconsistent. But now if Wingo's on your CB2, after another year of development, he gets to watch Cam Coleman work every day. I'm sure that pushes him. I think they did a great job on the offensive side of the ball. If we're not going to talk Cam Coleman, I think offensively, Melvin Siani from Wake Forest, the offensive tackle, is another huge get. We just talked about how there's product scarcity along the offensive line. You don't find many of those guys in the portal that can come in and play tackle for you at Texas. And now you have Trevor Gooseby at left tackle, Siani at right tackle, or maybe vice versa. You can move Brandon Baker inside. You like the interior there. You got a center and a left guard back that played some solid football down the stretch for you. So I think the offensive line is coming together for Texas, and you add a kind of a beauty piece, right, in Cam Coleman that can take the top off of the defense. And now all of a sudden, Arch Manning in that offense looks like it's going to be what maybe we thought it would be going into 2025. It will be that in 2026. Like, that's going to be a hell of a unit.
Yeah, this is the skill positions for the Texas Longhorns next year. Quarterback Arch Manning, wide receivers Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo, Emmett Mosley, who came on late in the year, and then the backfield, first team All ACC running back Hollywood Smothers, elite name, and Relique Brown. That's pretty nice. And I agree with you, Craven, because the offense got better as the season went on, but for a long time there, the best play was Ryan Wingo's screen pass.
Yeah, that's why Sark started with it like 4 times in a row. But yeah, now they're going to be able to spread the ball out. Now they have a superstar at wide receiver to demand double teams. Arch Manning, by the end of the year, was one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country. And, he's probably going to get the hype he got into 2025, but it's going to be deserved this time. Over 3,000 yards passing, over 30, total touchdowns. And then I like what they did on the defensive side of the ball too. Like, they added some instant starters. Rasheem Biles from Pitt is a linebacker that's going to come in and be kind of an Anthony Hill type player. I think he had like 17 and a half tackles for loss, second team All ACC, really disruptive player that can get into the backfield, that can make plays. And remember, Texas just hired Will Muschamp. And for those who weren't around the last time Will Muschamp was a defensive coordinator in the state at the University of Texas, it is aggressive. Like, he wants guys that can go hunt the quarterback. Biles is one of those in the box. Justin Cryer from Florida State, really good. They had a couple of defensive tackles with P4 experience. And then the underrated player to me is Bo Masco from Rutgers. Remember, Texas's cornerbacks coach was at Rutgers previously. They spent 2 years there together. Bo's going to come in and probably be one of the starters at cornerback and really help that secondary. So Texas's class, to me, I put out the story today on Tuesday. A+, did a great job in the portal and added instant impact stars. And that's what you want to do nowadays through the portal, especially when you recruit as well as Texas does in the high school ranks.
Yeah. Texas A+, snaps all around. Great job, Longhorns. Craven, my question to you, is this as fun covering or even being a fan of college football where the mode is now switched from, I remember when I used to play NCAA EA Sports Dynasty, and you accrue the high school ranks, and this guy comes in a freshman, and let's see how he develops. Use some of my XP gold coins on this guy, and then he becomes a starter junior, senior year. Now it's, hey, let's just build the best team possible every single year, picking guys from around the country as like a team builder. This is a subjective question here, but is this as fun? Because for some people, it's a lot more fun. For some people, they prefer that old way. What do you prefer?
Yeah, I think it depends on what team you're a fan of. If you are a fan of one of the blue bloods that in the old model was one of the 10 teams that had a chance to win a national championship every single year because of the caste system that was created by the high school recruiting reliance and the facilities and not being able to pay players, then you probably don't love this new system. If you're a G5 team that gets pillaged every single year, you probably don't love this system. But if you're a Texas Tech or a Houston or an Indiana or an SMU, or some of those programs, Ole Miss, Oregon, those programs that maybe were second tier, third tier previously, what Indiana did yesterday was open up the sport to possibilities that never existed before. If you are a program in the Power Four that has maybe been a bottom dweller or mid-pack and just never had the success there, you can point to the Hoosiers and go, if we go all in and we get the right man at the top of this organization, we can win a national championship. And to spin that to the state of Texas, for most of my life, the only two teams that had a real shot of winning a national championship would be Texas and Texas A&M. Now, if you look across the state, we have 5 or 6 teams that can do it. Maybe not next year, but in theory, they can build up a roster to be able to go and do that. That is good for college football, in my opinion, even if it's going to take us a few years to recalibrate in our mind that maybe big-time football can be played without the helmets that we're used to.
Totally agree. Now, this one team is a big-time helmet, but they did make their first college football playoff appearance last season. Texas A&M, I think the best player they got is the cornerback Rickey Gibson II from Tennessee. He was starting cornerback all his sophomore season, medical redshirt last year. I believe Des Ricks and Julian Humphrey are slated to start right now for the Aggies. I think Rickey Gibson II can come in there and compete. Craven, what say you about the Aggies transfer portal class so far and about Gibson specifically?
Yeah, Gibson's going to be really good. Like you said, missed 2024. Des Ricks became a surefire starter there, but with Will Lee gone, I do think that opens up another cornerback spot. Tariq Chappelle out at nickel as well. So, maybe Gibson can help out there if he doesn't win the corner spot. I think, I was there for the Miami game, and you could tell post-game Mike Elko, kind of like, at the end of the Las Vegas Bowl against USC, Mike Elko was like apocalyptic about the secondary, and he kind of like, we're going to get this fixed. I've never been a part of a secondary that was so bad. And then they got better there. This year it was running the ball and stopping the run. And A&M has signed 18 portal signees in this class. 9 of them play offensive or defensive line.
I love that.
It is a real line shift for the Aggies up front and both sides of the ball. They want to get bigger. They want to get more aggressive. They want to be more physical and kind of the stereotypical SEC team. And so for me, the biggest signing was Wilkin Formby. Offensive tackle, can play some guard, comes over from Alabama, has over 15 starts in his career. You lose Trey Zune, you lose Demetrius Crownover, but you also lose both guards and Chase Besantis and Amarj Reed-Adams. Formby's going to be a starter. Like where he ends up, I think Lamont Rogers, the former 5-star, ends up at left tackle. So Formby can be your right tackle. He can be your right guard. He comes in with a wealth of experience in the conference that you play and can solidify one of the 4 open spots that you have across the board.
Also, Cohen Eccles, former Katy legend, went to LSU, now coming back to Texas A&M. He actually was committed to A&M under Jimbo Fisher and then went to LSU once. Well, I don't know if it was after Mike Elko came in, but it was just once Jimbo Fisher was fired. So guys from Texas coming on back into the state. That's always cool to see.
Yeah, I also love what they did at the skill positions around Marcel Reed. Remember, they're returning their quarterback. That's a big advantage for the Aggies going into his 3rd year as a starter.
Well, some people would say it's not an advantage. I think they might be trolling a little bit, but there are going to be people that say that's not an advantage.
I mean, I think it is.
I think it is too.
Marcel-
I'm just putting out that into the air. I'm not saying I totally agree with it. I'm just saying the narrative is out there.
I believe Marcel Reed going into year 3 as a starter in a similar offensive system is a better option than you could have found anywhere else in the portal, especially if you weren't going to break the bank for it. And they've shown that their idea to do this is to find a quarterback kind of in home that they can afford, and then use that money elsewhere. And by afford, I mean A&M can afford anything, but make it more of an affordable position, and then use that money on wide receivers and on the lines of scrimmage and on the defense to like make a better team around them. Isaiah Horton from Alabama was kind of the consolation prize to Cam Coleman. A&M, Texas Tech, kind of the finalists for Cam Coleman. Texas gets them. Isaiah Horton's not a bad consolation prize. Comes in from Alabama, really good player, has played in big time games, big time system. And then I love what they did at tight end. Houston Thomas from UTSA. Going into the season, I had him as the second team all Texas tight end. He was going to have a big year. He split time with Patrick Overmeyer, who's now at Houston or transferred to Houston. So didn't put up the huge numbers, but he's going to be an upgrade at tight end. Tight end's a quarterback's best friend. And so now you got Mario Craver, Isaiah Horton, Houston Thomas, and Richie Anderson at tight end. Roman Bethel is back at wide receiver as well, Terry Bussey. So love what the Aggies did around Marcel Reed on top of what they did in the trenches.
Well, Aggies decide to keep their quarterback, get better around him. Texas Tech decided we're going big game hunting for another quarterback after Baron Morton leaves due to graduation. Texas Tech Red Raiders, I think their best get is none other than quarterback Brendan Sorsby, the number 1 rated transfer per ESPN. Texas Tech outbids LSU for him. Big game spenders. Talking about Craven, they're in that new echelon of college football teams that really benefit now from the NIL era with Cody Campbell there, of course. He ranked 3rd in the Big 12 last year with 3,380 yards, 36 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. I think my big takeaway watching the college football playoff, and I believe you even said this in our Slack, Craven, their offseason strategy is just, hey, what if we did what we did for the defense last year with the offense? Like, spend some money on the offense, bro. And they did. Yeah. Brendan
Sorsby, in my opinion, him and Sam Levitt, you could have the argument of who was the best quarterback in the transfer portal. I think for what Mac Leftwich wants to do, Sorsby, a perfect fit. We didn't see a lot of the dual threat stuff that offense enjoys schematically because that wasn't Baron Morton's game and he was injured. Sorsby is going to be able to use the quarterback run stuff, and their running back room is loaded. They didn't need to go to the portal for that. With Cam Dickey, Jacoby Williams, Quentin Joyner is going to get healthy. So expect Tech to run the ball a lot. They added Jordan Church from Louisville, an offensive lineman known as a run blocker. So I think they're going to be a more physical unit. But I like what they did around him as well. Kenny Johnson, the wide receiver from Pitt, Malcolm Simmons, a wide receiver from Auburn. When I was at the Orange Bowl, when we, and just in the press box, you're talking to other reporters, and it was like, who is the scariest guy on Tech's offense? There wasn't many great answers, and so I think that they've gotten more talented around there. Sorsby himself is a weapon because of his dual threat nature. I think they're going to be better offensively in 2026 than they were in 2025. How can they be better defensively, though? When you lose David Bailey, when you lose Lee Hunter, when you lose Jacob Rodriguez, well, one of the ways to do it is to go get Austin Romaine from Kansas State, an incredible linebacker, highly productive. Going to be there with going to be replacing Jacob Rodriguez production next to Ben Roberts and John Curry. And then along the defensive line, Carter, they added 8 new players.
Crazy. Platoon shift.
Right. Trey White from San Diego State, Adam Trick from Maryland, really good edge rushers. I'm going to butcher his name, but Mateen Ibaragba from Wake Forest,
close
defensive
enough.
Lineman, top 15 rated player, the top rated interior defensive lineman. They feel like he is kind of a Lee Hunter type that can come fill that mold. So, Devin Martin from UTSA in the secondary. So, Texas Tech reloaded. I think that they're clearly the favorite in the Big 12, and they went and got better at the quarterback position. I think they went and got better at the skill positions. If they're able to get even close to what they were along the defensive line last year with these new portal additions, they're going to be right back where they were this year, hoping to kind of punch up. And remember, Indiana they kind of crashed the CFP last year, were a quarterback away, went into the portal, got Fernando Mendoza, and they just won a national championship. I think Texas Tech feels similar to that, right? Like, we won the Big 12 championship. We got our feet wet in the college football playoff. Now we expect to get there. Let's go see if we can have a higher ceiling than that. What's the easiest way to do that? go improve at quarterback. Baron Morton's my guy. I think he was an incredible soldier for Texas Tech. But Brendan Sorsby, I think without question is an upgrade from what you're going to get at the quarterback position in 2026.
Yeah, and spoiler alert for Red Raiders fans, I've got a column coming out on Wednesday, I believe, about the top 5 Texas high school football stars returning to the state via portal. Brendan Sorsby is not on it. I didn't realize, Craven, that he went to Lake Dallas. He would not be the best Texas high school football player come back to the state in the portal. It could be the number 1 ranked transfer, but this was him at Lake Dallas. Split time as a starter on a 1-8 team in 2020, and then quarterback to 4-6 team in 2021. And I don't say that like disrespectfully. I say what a great story this guy is for building himself up through Indiana. He's at Indiana before it's cool, and then he goes to Cincinnati, and now he's coming to Texas Tech with a chance to go to the college football playoff. Just a crazy story for Brendan Sorsby, and one of those players who gets the benefit from the transfer portal who maybe we might not have heard from last couple years before the transfer portal happens, but he gets to use the ladder of college football as he continues developing after high school.
Yeah, kind of not for Drew Mestermaker, Brendan Sorsby would be one of the bigger stories of the year just because of what you said. Not the most prolific high school player. Went to Indiana back when that was like the lowest P4 school you could commit to type of deal. And he, Signetti comes in, brings his own guys, and he goes and blossoms at Cincinnati. He's been really good the last couple of years. I think he's going to be great in Leftwich's offense. He's played in the conference before, just a home run for Tech at quarterback.
But here's a quarterback who was highly touted coming out of high school and was a highly touted transfer. It's Baylor's DJ Lagway. Craven, that is my number 1 transfer for the Baylor Bears. I don't know how it can't be. He's the former Mr. Texas football winner, led Willis to a 12-1 record the first time since 1928 for that program, did something for the first time in almost 100 years. I find this so interesting, Craven, how the Florida Gators last year bet the Billy Napier era on DJ Lagway coming back and taking that next step. And for whatever it was, injuries, inconsistencies did not happen. Now Baylor says, I want to do the exact same thing. We're betting it all on DJ Lagway for the Dave Aranda era.
Yeah, and Jake Spavital is the guy that you'd want to try to right this ship for Lagway because clearly the ceiling is there. He's got incredible arm talent. He showed flashes as a true freshman. He had a few good games here as a sophomore. Just kind of got caught, played too early, and then you got a kind of a head coach who something duck? What's it called?
Lame duck.
Lame duck head coach. And it just never really worked for Florida this year outside of that Texas win. And Lagway's big issue has been turnovers. And I wonder how much of that has just been he hasn't had a ton of practice time. I think he's missed both springs since he's been at Florida. He's just had nagging injuries that haven't been able to get him on the field, working with his wide receivers, working within his system. What Spav does best for quarterbacks is just clear the picture. He makes it very easy. He gives you pretty specific windows. If this isn't open, then go here. He's not going to make it too hard on Lagway. He's not going to make him think too much. It's going to be get the ball, throw the ball, use that arm talent. He did wonders with Sawyer Robertson. He was with Fernando Mendoza back when they were at Cal. This is what Spav does. And so I love the partnership there. I think he gives them an incredible upside at the quarterback position. The thing I would say, though, is Baylor's issue hasn't been quarterback. They've had really good quarterback play the last couple of years, and it hasn't mattered too much. It's everything else that is a question mark for me when it comes to Baylor, and this transfer portal class is no different.
So transfer portal class is a big question mark for you because I saw when we did our National Signing Day show, Baylor kept Dave Aranda because Mack Rhodes, the athletic director, stepped down. They wanted some stability, right? They didn't want to rock the boat too much and lose momentum. Part of the reason was on their recruiting class. And then they keep Dave Aranda and everyone jumped ship, it felt like. There was only the few, the proud, the brave who stayed with the Baylor Bears in the high school recruiting. Did they make up some of that momentum in the transfer portal class, or is it still massive question marks for you, Craven?
Well, my question marks come. So the 3 teams that we've talked about so far, Texas, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech, they did not lose starters to the transfer portal, right? They are exporting guys who are down on the depth chart, and they were importing instant starters. Mm-hmm. Baylor is a team that has lost better players than they've gained. If you go to On3 and you look at their transfer portal class and you rank and you do it by rating, 3 of the top 4 players are leaving, right? Like Colton Price is going to Kentucky. Matthew Fobbs White is going to Virginia. DJ Coleman, the safety, going to Florida. Add in DJ Lagway, and those are the 4 top-rated guys either coming or going. And it goes down the list. Bryson Washington's going to Auburn. Kamarian Morgan's going to Virginia Tech. Keaton Thomas, the star linebacker, is going to Ole Miss.
That one hurts.
And so I like some of the players that they brought in. Jordan Mack from Coastal Carolina is a big-time player. Clanderman, the DC, is going to be an improvement there, and he's brought in a couple of guys that he knows. But just if you grade this on an import-export scale, I think it's fair to say Baylor either broke even or maybe got a little bit worse, and especially if you don't think DJ Lagway is going to hit at his 5-star potential. If he's just an average Big 12 quarterback, I think it's unquestionable that Baylor got worse going into 2026 from a talent standpoint. They lose Sawyer Robertson, they lose Josh Cameron, they lose Bryson Washington, they lose Keaton Thomas, they lose Carl Williams. Like, those are probably their 5 best players from last year. And so Colton Price that I mentioned is their best offensive lineman. The other one, Omar's, he graduated. And so it's a big year for Baylor, and I'm not sure the roster has been upgraded. It's going to need a lot of the young guys that they have put a lot of stock in the last couple of years from the portal to hit, and they're going to need some of these underrated transfer portal signees to be good. And maybe they will be, right? The transfer portal is an inexact science. I think even more than recruiting in a lot of ways when you get past the top 50 guys in the portal. So maybe Baylor is smart like a fox, and they have added some players here that are going to overachieve and really kind of right the ship, add in a defensive scheme that's competent, and maybe Baylor rises to 8 or 9 wins and competes in the Big 12. But just looking at it on paper, in my opinion, they lost more in the portal on the top end than they gained.
Yeah, dude, as you read all the names of Baylor high-impact players going to other programs, I'm already calling it right now. Next year is going to be the year where all the Baylor players that transferred start making big impacts, and everyone from college football goes, why was Baylor not better last year? There's teams like this every year where their best players transfer and they all start making big impacts, and you're like, hey, Indiana transfer, not Indiana because they just won the national championship, but Indiana before Signetti got there is like, all these Indiana players are doing amazing at other schools. How must Indiana been last year? Oh, they were 3-9 or 5-7. How the hell did that happen? So Baylor's that team next year. Book it.
Yeah, I don't think you're far off. I think they lost a ton to graduation. They lost a ton to the transfer portal, and you're entering a make or break year for the coaching staff. If Lagway hits and he's elevated 5-star in spat, that's the ultimate equal, right? Equalizer is the quarterback play and having elite quarterback play. And maybe Baylor gets it and the defense just becomes good, just solid, just a solid unit. And then that allows Baylor to be better. But just from a player-to-player standpoint, I think it'd be hard to argue that the Bears are more talented today than they were this time last year.
What are your thoughts on DJ Lagway? Do you think he hits?
No, not in the Mr. Texas football, what he did at Willis and what we thought he was going to do at Florida way. But I think he hits in terms of he becomes a solid Big 12 starter with Jake Spavital as his offensive coordinator, especially if he can go through the spring and the summer healthy, because he just has to cut down on the mistakes. He can make every single throw. I don't know. Maybe that's just who he is as a quarterback. Some guys are just gunslingers and they throw it and they have so much confidence in their arm strength and their ability that they make mistakes. And you don't want quarterbacks that only throw 2 or 3 interceptions, because that means they're not taking any chances pushing the ball downfield. But I think he's one of those quarterbacks that was probably overrated based on the production and what he did as a high school player, and underrated based on what he's done the last 2 years at Florida, and I'll probably land somewhere in the middle.
The DJ Lagway conversation is so interesting to me because I remember my first 7-on-7 tournament in College Station I covered at Dave Campbell's. We watched DJ Lagway play, and he was really good in 7-on-7, but 7-on-7s where the quarterbacks can't run, they have to throw, and there's certain guys who running is such a big part of their game, they aren't as good at 7-on-7 in underwear football as they are with the shoulder pads. And right, I'd want them to be better in the shoulder pads, mind you. But that was the narrative on DJ Lagway. He needs the running game, his ability to run, to be a game changer. And I feel like he didn't have that at all at Florida. They tried to make him a pocket passer only, and maybe that's because the dude was like mummified in casts throughout the spring and summer and in a walking boot here and an arm sling there and just constantly injured. But do you think he still has that running game for Baylor next year?
It's probably like a Connor Wigman situation.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Where if he can really get healthy and he gets in a system that will allow him to do it, I think he can thrive there. Spav is kind of old school air raid to where he doesn't ask his quarterback to do that all that often, but that doesn't mean he can't if the guy can do it. I mean, he was around Johnny Manziel, obviously, and stuff. And so, if Lagway's healthy and they think the legs and the run game can help, great. But with a quarterback that's oft injured, especially in the lower body, what's the risk reward there? What do his legs add to you that an injury you would be willing to sacrifice for, right? Like 9 games of DJ Lagway, is that worth it to run him more? Or do you want 12 games to where he runs less? Like, I think that's some of the math that they do behind the scenes on these quarterbacks in the run game.
All right, Craven, let's round out the Big 12 with the Houston Cougars coming off a 10-win season. Everything's looking up for Willie Fritz. What do you think about this transfer portal class? And I want to hear who your biggest player is that they got, because I have mine picked here, and I want to see if we have the same.
I love Willie Fritz's class that he put together here. When we talk about like Baylor in terms of the imports or the exports, like On3 does it as an index score based on like what you've lost, what you've gained. Houston's in the top 8 of the transfer portal index thing because they're not losing the Jeremiah Wilsons and the AJ Halseys of the world. They kept Amari Thomas. Connor Wigman's coming back. Like their big time defensive tackle is back. Like they're keeping all the star players that they can, and then they're adding. I would say it's the 2 guards, Shadre Hurst or Anthony Boswell. Hurst, an All-American Conference first team guard last year. Boswell from Toledo can come in right away and play center. And then you add a guy like Mekhi Hughes, who was great at Tulane.
Ding, ding,
this
ding,
run
ding.
game could be big time if they get better on the interior offensive line. You bring back Wegman, you add Hughes. So I think, it's always going to be hard for Houston to add frontline guys along the offensive line when recruiting against Texas and stuff in the prep high school rankings. But if you can go and get these G5 stars who can play well and are all conference and put them along your offensive line, I think the Cougars did a great job up front this year. Again, I think Wes Fritz and that staff does an incredible job at Houston.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. The guards were the correct answer, but I picked all of these top transfer players like I'm an 8-year-old basically and went quarterback, wide receiver, running back, defensive back. Mekhi Hughes, baby, the running back. Give him to me. He had 1,300 yards as a freshman at Tulane, 1,400 yards as a sophomore, then goes to Oregon, which basically Siberia for him, has 17 carries for 70 yards on the entire season. Hey, guess who his coach was at Tulane? Willie Fritz. Guess who his coach at Houston's going to be? Willie Fritz. Do we think we're going to have some magic here again, Craven? Is Mekhi Hughes going to be back?
I think so. New scenery, back into a system that he's familiar with. Slade Nagel, the offensive coordinator, he's familiar with as well. That scheme fits. I think he's just a one-cut kind of back, and that's what Houston's going to do. The Cougars lose Dean Connors, who was the leading rusher last year for them at Houston. You go and you add Mekhi Hughes to where if this hits, you wouldn't have been able to afford him when he left Tulane to go to Oregon, right? You're getting him on a discount coming back to you to Houston, to that coaching staff. I love what they did. Patrick Overmeyer, as I mentioned, a UTSA tight end that came in. Trent Walker, wide receiver from Oregon State that they saw last year when they played up there. So I like what they did offensively. I think the offensive line got better. And then defensively, I think the most underrated player in this portal class is Jalen Mayo from SFA. Started his career at Virginia Union. Then 1 year at SFA, he was all Texas, all American, all Southland, all that stuff, an incredible cornerback. He will take over for Latrell McCutcheon. I think that secondary is going to be really good for Austin Armstrong in that unit.
Okay, I lied. We actually weren't rounding out the Big 12 because we almost forgot about TCU. Don't worry, TCU fans, Horned Frog fans, we're talking about you right now. My best player is the interior offensive lineman, Noah McKinney. He was the number 1 rated prospect in the 247 sports transfer portal ranking. So Sorsby was the number 1 ESPN. McKinney's the number 1 in 247. I cherry pick based on which one has the player higher. So we're going with 247 here. Craven, McKinney is the biggest evidence that the transfer portal being open from January 2nd to January 16th wasn't real, because he entered the portal as soon as Gundy got fired, played out the season with Oklahoma State while he's in the portal, and then commits to TCU in November while still playing at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, remember, kids, the transfer portal is not a real thing because these are students and they can just unenroll and enroll at new universities, and who's going to stop them, right? Mm-hmm. Like until they're made employees, they can do whatever they want. So the portal is more of a figment of your imagination than anything.
Well, it's very much like okay, the transfer portal. Hey guys, it's open from January 2nd to January 16th. So this will be the only time of chaos. And what happened instead was guys were just saying, I am going to enter the transfer portal in a month from now, so colleges come contact me.
Yeah, I mean, not to derail this podcast, but like there's not a second portal technically after spring ball in the way that there used to be, but like there are going to be guys who transfer. And I am very interested in how the NCAA or whoever's in charge now deals with that, because like they lose every time they go to court, and I'm not sure how they can enforce it. And so I'm not sure that the second portal doesn't hold. There will be less guys in it, but I do think we'll see some portal activity moving forward.
I just like the business school.
TCU, I'm going to read you the number. So Tech signed 20, A&M 18, UT 16, Houston 17, SMU 15, Baylor 22, TCU 9.
So they went supplement, not full overhaul.
They are kind of zigging where everybody is zagging. They're trying to find some value in the old school developmental, get them from high school, only use the portal for a Band-Aid situation, which is ironic because Sonny was using the portal before the portal even existed. And now he's kind of pivoted to the other way because he knows he can't arms race, with the Tech and the Texases and the A&Ms of the world. Why not try to get some of those high schoolers in that maybe used to go to those other schools? Now you can spend the money on those and kind of homegrown them. But one of the pickups that I really enjoy, I think Jaden Craig, the quarterback, to me, Sonny Dykes is an underrated quarterback talent evaluator. I don't think he's ever gotten the credit for, Nick Foles at Arizona and Shane Buechele at SMU. Like, he has done a really good job at kind of finding these underrated, undervalued quarterbacks and making them into name brands. I think Jaden Craig from Harvard is the next one. He leaves there as the all-time leading passer at that school. He, in his 3 years as a starter, they won the Ivy League, or at least a share of it, all 3 years. I know the offensive line coach there really well because he used to be at Rice, Jim Jackson. And as soon as this happened, he texted me like, Sonny found another one. Like, I think Craig, not as good as Josh Hoover, right? Like, I mean, Josh Hoover's going to Indiana for a reason. But in college football, you don't need NFL quarterbacks all the time. You need a good system. You need talent around them. And you need an accurate quarterback that can make decisions. I think Jaden Craig is exactly that. Gordon Samus is the new offensive coordinator. It's kind of more of an air raid, old school, kind of what Dykes likes to run. I think that's going to be a perfect marriage there. I'm excited to see what the passing attack is for TCU. I don't think it's going to take as big of a drop-off as maybe you would believe with Josh Hoover gone and Eric McAllister gone. I think TCU is going to put up plenty of passing yards.
Is TCU similar to Baylor, though, and you think maybe the players they lost were better than the players they imported? Or is this not similar at all, and they just wanted to supplement with 9 guys?
They didn't lose much other than Hoover, right? Which, yeah. I mean, is big. You lost your quarterback, and he is the highest rated player of the entrances or exits there. But after that, like the next 4 TCU guys, they didn't lose a bunch of starters besides their quarterback to other schools. They lost more depth pieces, like Nate Palmer, the running back, and Jonathan Bax, the linebacker. Like they lost more. Cam Jamerson, a cornerback. So they didn't lose a bunch. They only lost 8. Like, again, Tech lost 21, A&M 14, Texas 25, Houston 15, SMU 19, Baylor 30, TCU 8. Like, they just don't have the turnover. Some of that's year 3 of a defensive coordinator, head coach, still staying there and stuff. But I do think TCU is taking a different approach to roster building than the rest of the Power 4 schools in the state. And it'll be interesting to see kind of where that shakes out. Okay, let's go to our last Power 4 team in the ACC, SMU.
I'm going cornerback Jarvis Lee from USF, mostly because this guy ranked second in the FBS with 12 tackles for loss as a defensive back. So I don't know if he's going to play corner or nickel, but I do know secondary is a big position of need for Scott Simons, the defensive coordinator in that group. Losing Deuce Harmon, Isaiah Nakobia, Ahmad Moses, all in the secondary. What do you think overall, though, of SMU's transfer portal strategy, Craven?
The thing that sticks out to me first off is that they signed 3 tight ends.
Love that. We can replace RJ Maryland and Matthew Hibner in the aggregate.
Yeah, you lose Hibner, you lose RJ Maryland, who had essentially become a tight end or a wide receiver there at the end of his career. But they bring in Theo Malin Ostrom from Texas A&M, who's been a productive player, big target, can block. Randy Pittman and Trey Jackson also at tight end. So I thought that was funny. Jalen Hale. Alabama transfers, a Texas high school product, former Longview player, really good. I like Yannick Smith from East Carolina. But if I had to pick kind of the best player, I'd go Kendrick Raphael, the running back from Cal. They're losing Chris Johnson. They're losing TJ Harden, who was a big pickup, ironically, from Cal the year before. So kind of went back to that well, and they'll pair him with Derek McFall and some other young guys. So, Kendrick Raphael was, I think, an honorable mention all ACC team. They played against him the last week, when SMU played against Cal. So I think that was probably their best pickup. Him or Hale, I would say, is their best pickup. And then defensively, they needed to get better in the secondary. They just added Javon Thomas today, former South Oak Cliff, who went to Texas A&M. Jimmy Wyrick from UTSA is going to play there. And then 4 different defensive linemen that they brought in, including Malcolm Alcorn Crowder from Kansas State, who's like 6'6", 300 pounds. And, that's where the turnover is. Like SMU lost pretty much their entire defensive line. They think they're going to get better in the secondary, kind of like an addition by subtraction at cornerback. But they have some major holes at safety with Isaiah Nakwobia gone, Ahmad Moses gone. So, again, going into the year, just like 2025, I think the biggest question marks are defensively, and they're going to need some of these portal guys to hit right away.
You mentioned those 2 South Oak Cliff secondary players, Thomas and Jimmy Wyrick, also played at South Oak Cliff. That could also be because SMU just got South Oak Cliff defensive coordinator Kyle Ward to come coach the secondary for them, which I thought was a huge offseason pickup to the coaching staff. South Oak Cliff been to 5 straight state championships, won 3 of them. They got Kyle Ward and now Riley Dodge, too, from the high school ranks on that offensive side, too. So not just transfer portal, but coaching staff portal doing really well there over at SMU.
Yeah, Rhett Lashley does a really good job of ingratiating himself with the Texas high school. He's got Derek King as the quarterback coach there, Kyle Ward, Riley Dodge, a lot of us, 40-year-old Texas high school nerds, big fans of what has gone on in Lashley's staff. And, not only does it help in high school recruiting, which SMU is trying to do more and more of, but in portal recruiting and those bounce backs, the rebounds that maybe went out of the state or went to a G5 school, kind of slipped through the cracks. You have vouchers on your staff where even if they didn't coach them, they know who did. And you can go to that head coach and be like, hey, tell me about this guy in the portal. Is he worth it? What's he like? Why did he get into the portal? Those kind of touch points, I think, are underrated parts of the hits and misses of the portal. Because it's one thing to have money and to go spend it. It's another thing to spend it on the right people. And I think SMU is getting away from being purely portal, but they still need, these guys to come in and hit, and having former high school coaches on your staff, I think allows you to do background information on them quicker and better.
Okay, let's go to the group of 6 ranks. And Craven, I know this is a little more of a jumbled puzzle here. That's why I reached out to our partners at the Republic of Football, Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast Network. So I'm starting off with North Texas. JD Davis helping me out with this one. I think running back Jaheim White from West Virginia is going to be the biggest impact transfer portal player. He was Neil Brown's leading rusher at West Virginia in 2023 and 2024, then had a season-ending knee injury in week 2 of last year, so kind of a medical redshirt guy. Neil Brown, obviously the new coach at North Texas. What do you think of that pick? And then also, what do you think about how Neil Brown has attacked the portal?
Love how Neil Brown has attacked the portal. It is going to be hard to replicate the star power of last year. I mean, you lose a Drew Mestamaker and a Caleb Hawkins and a Wyatt Young and pretty much the whole defense and the whole staff. They've signed over 40 players. So it's going to be a completely new roster, new names, new head coach. And I'm not sure, like if we're doing winners and losers, like North Texas is obviously in the loser category, but not through any fault of their own. Like I think they've signed a great class. They just lost some like really big pieces for circumstances that are out of their control, and that's their head coach left and took all of those best players and the whole staff with them. And so,
if you're a G6 program and you win in the fall, you're going to lose in the transfer portal, probably.
Yes, especially if you lose your head coach. What I really enjoy about this class, the running back, as you mentioned, Jaheim White, the correct answer here from West Virginia, a really good player in the Big 12, reunited with the offensive or with Neil Brown, who calls his own plays. But their offensive line class is awesome. Henry Fanuka from Missouri, Nato Amazula from Texas, who's a DFW guy. They get a Virginia Tech offensive line transfer in there. Like they brought in P4 bodies. And that, one of the things I like most about my job is I get to go to all these programs, and you do like the wide receivers and the secondary guys for the most part look the same. The quarterbacks can look the same. The offensive linemen and defensive linemen, they're just different body types because God doesn't make that many of them. Right?
Not everyone can be Goliath.
North Texas is adding bodies that typically don't get to a program like North Texas. And maybe they didn't become Power 4 frontline starters, but the potential and the body types and just the ability to move guys off the ball is going to be there. And Neil Brown, for those who don't know, likes to run the MF in football. And I think North Texas is putting together a team that can do that. It doesn't have the star power at wide receiver, at quarterback. It doesn't look like an Eric Morris transfer portal class. But I think for what Neil Brown's going to turn North Texas into, this is a great proof of concept in year one that we can go into the Power 4, we can get these kind of bodies, and we can reset this roster right away. I love what North Texas has done.
What jumps out to me is North Texas is doing something very similar to SMU in the Sonny Dykes era and early in the Rhett Lashley era, is get these former four-star DFW high school guys who go away from home to come back in the transfer portal. Like Fanuku was at North Crowley. And hey, we talked about with South Oak Cliff defensive backs going to SMU, partially because of Kyle Ward. Ray Gates, the North Crowley head coach, is now at North Texas as the assistant to the head coach. And then Umi Azulu, who was in Allen, right down the road from North Texas. So I love this strategy from the Mean Green.
Yeah, the Ray Gates hire was, I like to watch. Coaching hires are an inexact science, right? And any of the talking heads, including me, who get on here and tell you if a hire is good or a hire is bad, they don't know what they're talking about. Like none of us can see into the future. But there are markers along the way in that first year that give you a pretty good idea if this tenure is going to work or not. Not 100% idea, but a pretty solid idea. Hiring, having the understanding to go and hire a guy like Ray Gates is one of those like, oh, Neil Brown's going to be fine. He knows what's going on here. He understands. He's really close to Chris Gilbert from his 1 year at Texas. And so I think there was probably some consulting there done on kind of who to go get, who to talk to, who to rely on, DFW. Gates was a great hire. If I can throw out one more name that I really enjoy from this transfer portal class, there's 40 plus guys, so we could spend an hour doing this. But one guy I really like is Zake Barker, linebacker from SMU, but really linebacker from East Carolina. I like to compare levels of play. And maybe he didn't crack. I mean, injuries kind of got in his way, but he never became what they thought he was going to be at SMU. At East Carolina, he was a dog. And so you put him back into the American, you kind of have a linebacker to build around, to be your middle linebacker, to have the green dot on his helmet, who's played in this league, who knows he can excel at this level. I think that was a really savvy late pickup by North Texas in the portal as well.
I think, what Neil Brown did at North Texas, hiring Ray Gates, is similar to show that he's valid, right, for Texas. I think that's very similar to what Scott Abel did at Rice, hiring John Kay, promoting him to defensive coordinator immediately when he takes over at Rice. Let's talk about the Rice Owls now. First, actually, is this the first or second transfer portal class under Scott Abel? I think this is technically the second.
Yeah, we'll call it 1.5.
Okay, the line came 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, he was hired early enough to attack the portal. Rice is just an interesting spot, right? And how many roster spots do you have? I don't think he was able to do as much work in last year's portal as he's done so far in this year's portal.
You want to go with your favorite player on Rice, Craven, or you want me to start it off? This one's courtesy of Matthew Bartlett at the Roost.
I mean, I think I'm taking the easy answer in Ja'Cory Brown.
Yep. Ding, 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 ding.
The quarterback from UCF. Like, they didn't expect to lose their quarterback in the portal. I think Rice thought that they were humming. They were humming. We're going to keep Quentin Jackson at running back, and we'll run this thing back, and we'll get better after a year under the belt. And so to have to pivot and go find a starter, I think Brown is a really athletic player who's going to be fun in this style of offense. They also add Gail Ochoa at the position for UNLV for some depth there. But I really like Brown, and I'm excited to see what he brings to this offense with his athleticism.
Did Jenkins go to Kansas? Is that right?
I don't know. I honestly haven't heard where he's gone yet.
Okay, I'll look that up in a second here. But on Brown, that note,
once they're not mine anymore, I just kind of
whatever. They're somewhere. We'll always love them forever, but we got to focus on our Texas teams here.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah, you're right. Kansas.
So Ja'Cory Brown at UCF. So last year he played against Iowa State. He had 154 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and then was 8 of 20 through the air for 62 yards. Perfect. That's what perfect. Rice needs.
yeah. That's just what the doctor ordered. I also love their last 2 commitments, or at least the last 2 commitments going into the weekend, were Leo Blum from Yale and Scott Becker from Princeton, like 2 offensive linemen from the Ivy Leagues. That's another just like perfect situation there. But I think the room outside of quarterback, which is clearly the most important position in football, and definitely at Rice when you're running that option, where they needed to get better the most was in the secondary. The Rice secondary was atrocious last year, specifically in losses down the stretch. They had 6 or 7 new defensive backs through the portal. Tariq Watson from UAB, I think, was a good pickup, along with A.J. Brown, also from UAB. So retooled the whole secondary there, and that's going to help the Owls a lot. I think that's the position group that probably was helped out the most this year through the portal, was the cornerback room and the safety room.
All right, let's go over to San Antonio for the UTSA Roadrunners. I'm picking my top guy. This is also courtesy of some help from Javi Cardenas, who covers UTSA very well. Dylan Spencer, the defensive end from Texas Tech. He's a 6'4" guy, and mainly I think it's just a position of need for UTSA. They had 24 sacks in 13 games last year, which is just a far cry from the days of Trey Moore and Jamori Robinson. So Dylan Spencer, it's got to be now to put up some numbers, transfer from Texas Tech.
I'm going to go with Brandon High.
Also a great pick. Javi mentioned him to me too.
From Cal via UTSA. Kind of a rare bounce back here. He was at UTSA. He goes to Cal. Now he's back at UTSA. The Roadrunners lose Robert Griffin, who was Robert Henry, who was a big part of that offense last year. Provides balance with Owen McCown. What were they going to do at running back? Bringing High in to pair with some of the guys who are back there who are young. I think that gives them a really big running back room. Gonna help Owen McCown. The Roadrunners also lost a lot through the portal. Devin McEwen's at Ohio State now.
That was a head scratcher for me, Craven. Was it for you?
No, I mean, McEwen's really good. I actually thought he was going to go to Kentucky and follow Joe Price and kind of reestablish himself there with that offense. Justin Burke's there at Kentucky as well. So I thought he was going to go to Kentucky, but when Ohio State comes calling at wide receiver, you answer that phone as quickly as possible.
I guess I knew he was really good. I didn't know he was Ohio State good, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be like wide receiver 3 or 4, but he's going to make more money there than he could have in 10 lifetimes at UTSA, right? Sure. So you have to go do that. So I think UTSA did as well as they could in the transfer portal, but they did lose, a lot of their best defensive linemen, some guys in the secondary, the wide receiver, as we just talked about. Running back graduated. Keeping Owen McCown, obviously huge. They kept some key pieces along the offensive line. That is not easy to do. But I do think they shored up the defense with some really good players here. I think one of the more underrated ones I'd like to mention is Elijah Baldwin from UTEP, who's originally a San Antonio native, going back to UTSA. He was excellent for the Miners, a really havoc causing player off the edge at linebacker. Yeah, he's basically a defensive end, linebacker hybrid, going to fit perfectly in what UTSA does. They always have those kind of guys. Like they have always had really good pass rushers Going Trey Moore, Marcus Davenport, like you can go down the list. I think he's going to be one of those for UTSA, a really good pickup.
Yeah, for my pick, it was either Elijah Baldwin or Dylan Spencer. I went with Spencer, but could very well be Baldwin too. That just goes nuclear this year for UTSA. Okay, Texas State, San Marcos. This is courtesy of Kev Chardello. William Boone, UNC, I believe, offensive lineman. That's a pretty big get for the Texas State Bobcats, literally and figuratively. What do you think, Craven?
Yeah, I think that was a good one. Texas State, it was kind of interesting this cycle. UTSA is announcing all these players. North Texas is announcing all these players. Texas State decided to keep it very close to the vest publicly until the portal was closed. You could tell they were worried about announcing some commitments or signings early and then maybe not holding on to them. Wanted to keep it quiet and then just announce 17 of them today. And so still kind of digesting what their class is going to be. Jalen Early from Missouri. A good player with a good body type. We talked about bringing in those linemen from P4. They get one from Missouri. They get one from TCU. And so, I like what they've done in the trenches. I think Texas State's biggest portal wins, though, were keeping guys out of it. Keeping Brad Jackson out of it. Keeping Jalen Jenkins out of it. Keeping Bo Sparks out of it. Chris Don out of it. They're going to have a really good offense with a new defensive coordinator in. It's just seeing if they can piecemeal together or too deep and become good to above good on the defensive side of the ball, because I think the Bobcats are going to score plenty of points in the Pac-12.
All right, got two more teams on the docket, former Conference USA foes. Now UTEP in the Mountain West, Sam Houston in Conference USA. Let's start with UTEP coming off. We mentioned it last episode. Disappointing 2-10 season. Let's see if they've made up some momentum in the transfer portal, kind of like they have in the first 2 years under Scotty Walden with back-to-back top classes in the Conference USA. This is courtesy of Adrian Broadus. I think the quarterback E.J. Colson from Incarnate Word was a really nice get. He had 19 total touchdowns last year, and they were very thin in the quarterback room. They got an incoming freshman from Colleyville Heritage and Bodie Weaver, and then just an incredibly jacked Chad Warner, who I got on that AI picture going around on Twitter, X Craven. I don't know if you saw this as well. He looked like the Hulk.
I did see it. AI is getting too good. I had a few people get caught for that. I was like, guys, there's no way. He was 185 pounds in high school. They added another quarterback today, Raymond Moore from Morgan State, who had over 1,000 yards passing, 414 yards on the ground there. So that comes in to be depth with Colson. They're going to have to figure out quarterback. Elijah Fields from SFA, the defensive tackle, big fan of him. The Lumberjacks were really good. He was a big reason why, kind of all-conference player there. They need to get better along the trenches. Brian Williams, the offensive lineman from Jackson State, I think was a solid pickup. We'll see. I think UTEP's one of those teams that clearly is going to lose more in the portal than they probably gain. But you got to count on some of the development behind the scenes from those two back-to-back top-ranked classes in Conference USA, and hopefully that's enough to go into the Mountain West and compete right away.
Mm-hmm. And then the last team on our docket, Sam Houston.
Well, I do want to mention Tavoris Jones from a running back from Missouri, one of the best running backs ever in El Paso, coming back home. Maybe that hits and he becomes a superstar there at UTEP as well.
He also went to El Paso Burgess, but is not related to Aaron Jones, the UTEP great who went on to. I don't know if he'll be a Hall of Famer, but he was a Pro Bowler in the NFL for multiple years with the Packers and Vikings. Okay, last team on the docket, Sam Houston. I'm going the linebacker Brian Bates Jr. from Delaware State, and that's courtesy of Ben Sorrells, who is so plugged in to Sam Houston. He was an HBCU All-American last year, 80 tackles, 7 tackles for loss. Was not really a position of need, I don't think, for Sam Houston. Let's be honest. It's Sam Houston, after a tough year, you got every place is a position of need for sure. But they thought they had some good young linebackers, but Brian Bates is just too good to pass up.
Yeah, I like Zion Taylor from Houston. I know that staff at Houston likes him as well. Just, maybe not at the Big 12 level. Kind of got, pushed out is probably the wrong word, but I think he was lower on the depth chart than he wanted to be. Stacey Bay from Arizona, a really good player. I've been impressed with what Sam Houston has done in the portal. Phil Longo pretty loudly kind of suggested that how late he was hired into the portal last year really handcuffed what that roster could be and just the talent and the ceiling that they could have as a team in 2025. This has been a better representation of the roster building that they want to do, and I've been pretty impressed with it. They've gotten a lot of P4 spin downs. Kylan Barry Johnson from Wisconsin, a wide receiver that Longo had when he was at Wisconsin. I think that's going to be a big one as well. So it's a good mixture of kind of smaller school Division II or FCS, kind of All-Americans, as you mentioned, and then some P4 bodies that maybe didn't get into the too deep, didn't get a lot of playing time. Now they can come to Sam Houston. They added, I think, 3 guys from NC State. And so, I William Davis from West Virginia is a solid player. So I like what they've done at Sam Houston. I think it's an underrated class in the state.
Phil Longo, former offensive coordinator at Wisconsin, getting some Wisconsin transfers. The defensive coordinator, Freddie Autry-Lindsey, who was at NC State previously, gets some NC State transfers. So that's the benefit sometimes of getting these Power 4 coordinator coaches that come down to Sam Houston.
Yep, 100%. And now you have time to do it. And you have time to research, like they could put a plan in place. They could have personnel staff looking into these guys into the year. Like they could hit the ground running, and the fruit of that labor is showing.
So that was a recap of the transfer portal class for all of our 13 Texas FBS teams. Now let's talk about some of the best Texas high school football players transferring around the country. And a lot of this is the best players transferring from a Texas team to an out-of-state team. So let's cue the Sarah McLachlan in memoriam. In the arms of an angel. Even though some of them are going to Ohio State, so it's pretty awesome.
Are you a karaoke guy?
I am a karaoke guy. Yeah.
I could have put some money on that answer.
When we cover the 7-on-7 tournament in College Station, there is a bar in College Station we go to that has a karaoke machine, and I am known there. Craven, they know I'm coming around mid-June every year.
Can I tell you something that's probably pretty predictable about me?
Mm-hmm. Not a karaoke guy?
Never done it once in my life.
Wow. If you had to do it though, what would be your song?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't even know.
I'll start. I'm Shania Twain. Whose bed have your boots been under?
I don't know if I listened to the type of music that would be good karaoke. I don't know how many Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd songs you could karaoke to.
Yeah, I don't know if you could just have a 10-minute guitar solo on your karaoke song.
Yeah. Maybe some Beatles song, maybe like a Rocky Raccoon or something like that. I don't know. A Horse by America, a horse of, or what is it?
A Horse with No Name?
Went through the desert with a horse with no name. Like maybe that song. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I've never had to think about it before because I would never do it.
All right,
there's not a sum of money. Like I don't, not that you could afford, right? Like there's not a sum of money that any of my friends could ever put together that would get me on stage to sing in front of other people.
What if they offered you wide receiver 3 money at Ohio State like Devin McEwen?
Yeah, it'd have to be generational, right? It'd have to be like put my daughter through college type money. Otherwise, I'll just invest and figure it out on my own.
Okay, Devin McEwen, first guy on the list, going to Ohio State. Great for him. Jacksonville legend out of high school. Had a really solid career at UTSA. Again, I was a little surprised, not because he isn't awesome, but I just didn't know that he was like an Ohio State type wide receiver. But all props to him. Josh Hoover, we've hinted at multiple times on this show. From TCU going to Indiana, the now reigning national champion is going to replace Fernando Mendoza there. And then Drew Mestamaker from UNT to Oklahoma State. We mentioned one of the best stories in all of Texas last year, never starting a high school game at quarterback, walk on at UNT, now go to Oklahoma State. It's very similar to the quarterbacking journey of Brendan Sorsby, kind of moving up through the ranks from high school to college. And then the last one I had on the list is Rice linebacker Ty Morris, who was an all-conference player, goes to Rutgers. So congrats to him. It sucks for Rice, but going to the Big Ten, that's pretty cool. I know I'm missing so many guys here, Craven. Those are just quick off the top of my head guys I could think of that are leaving the state.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I kind of like if you're leaving the state, I forget you exist. Like
you're honestly, like the high school football coach who doesn't remember his like left guard's name in February of his senior year after the football season ends.
Yeah, you gotta create some new brain space for everybody that's playing in Texas. So like I couldn't tell you anything I put in last year's magazine. I can't tell you anything about many of the schools. Sometimes you get on like podcasts or on radio stuff and they start asking you some stuff outside of your beat and you're like, whoa, on live no way. Don't be quizzing me about Indiana right now. I don't watch much Hoosier football until like the playoffs. So I can't think of any big shockers off the top of my head.
That's kind of like me with the NFL. My, grandparents will ask like what I'm thinking about the NFL teams. It's like, I've never known less about the NFL, Grandma. Like once I got on at Dave Campbell's, like I'm not watching on Sunday.
Yeah. I hate when you're talking to people and you're like, actually, I don't really watch the NFL. And they like always assume it's like for political reasons. It's like, no, I'm not a dork. I just like,
and then they're like, me too, right?
Like by Sunday, I can't do it. I have a wife. She will leave me.
Yeah, that you're almost walking into a bear trap. It's like, when they started putting the lettering in the end zone, right? Yeah, brother. Wait, hold on now.
Just out of time, man. Like I don't. So yeah.
All right, y'all. That's gonna do it for our transfer portal episode. Really appreciate y'all listening. Craven, any closing thoughts before we head on out of here?
Like I said on the front end of this podcast, the state of Texas has 6 teams in the top 25. There has never been a state, including the state of Texas, to have more than 3 at the AP top 25. We have really entered a golden age of college football in the Lone Star State, and it's because of revenue share. It's because of the transfer portal. It's allowed more teams into the mix, and we are fortunate enough to live in a state where people are doing well, and a lot of these donors and alumni bases have money, and they have the passion behind football. So I wish the Southwest Conference still existed, but it's fun to kind of cover the state as it's kind of like Ohio has 8 teams, right? Only one of them ended up in the top 25. Like we have entered a golden age of college football in the state, and it's cool to do this podcast and be in this chair as that's kind of happening.
It's a golden age, and we got you covered for all of it. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast.